Powwows are a way to celebrate and honor the Native and Indigenous communities and culture. An acquaintance, Jane Bartlett, told me about a business in Mankato named Lakota Made that uses plant materials to create products with knowledge of the Native and traditional culture. Well, you know me, I really wanted to find out more. So I called the owner, Megan Bolbear, and she said we could come to learn. Thanks so much for letting us come to visit.
Yeah, thanks for calling. That was awesome. Thank you.
So, tell me about your background.
Well, I originally come from Milks Camp, South Dakota, which is on the Rosebud Reservation, so south central South Dakota. And everyone, it's a really rural area. And so I grew up, my parents were going to school full time and working full time. And so I spent a lot of time with my grandparents and my uncles. And if we didn't want to get put to work, we were outside. So we chased horses and cows and we were outside. Didn't matter the temperature or the weather, we were always outside. And so in order for us to continue to stay outside, my uncle started teaching us about plants that we could snack on, plants for our bee stings and our bug bites and our poison ivy and things like that. And so that's really where I got started. I was probably about 4 or 5 years old when that started. My grandma, she also taught me about gardening and taking care of plants and things like that. And then as I got older, I met my dad's side of the family who they're very traditional in our Lakota culture. And so my dad's grandma taught me the cultural uses of our plants.
So, do you have family members involved in your work now?
Yeah, I do. I have 2 of my brothers that work for me. I'm the oldest, and then my next oldest brother, he's here, and he's our general manager. He takes care of all the problems that arise with making and shipping and inventory and things like that. And then my youngest brother, Michael, who's our shipping manager. So yeah, they both work for me.
How did you end up in Mankato with your business?
Originally, my mom had double booked or triple booked herself, and she asked if I would fill in for her at the Makato Wachipi as an educator for Education Day. And so I was like, okay, I'll do that. And so I came up here and I taught about women's regalia, and I met Dave Braveheart, who was the cultural liaison for the city and the powwow. And so after I met him, and he was like, well, you did great. Why don't you come back next year? And I was like, okay. So a little bit later, I got offered a job to help out with starting a recovery nonprofit program. And so we got that up and going for a little while. And then I became a stay-at-home mom for a little bit. And while I was making salves and soaps like that for my family and my kids, my ex decided that I should start selling these things. And so, and I was like, this is kind of weird because everyone can make this stuff. Everybody knows what this stuff is. Everybody can do this. It's really easy. Why would I sell it when everyone can make it? He was like, nobody knows how to make this stuff. Nobody knows what this stuff is. Nobody knows what to go in their yard and look for. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. So I ignored him for a while, and then I made an extra batch of salves and I put it on my personal Facebook page, and that was the start of Lakota Made.
So, did you have to go through a lot of rules and regulations to start a business too?
I had to do, Minnesota law. I had to file the LLC and all that, all that stuff of starting a business. And then I did a lot of reaching out to other herbalists that I knew about, what's the laws and regulations. And they said, well, actually, Minnesota has this law that as long as it's done within cultural uses and it's herbalist and you're not making any medical claims, you can go underneath this Minnesota law and practice. And I said, oh, okay. So that's what we do. We also go along the lines with federal rules and regulations. And so, which is just, we can't make any medical claims. We can't say anything cures. We can't say the C word, which is cancer. We can't say so many things. But the education piece about that is it doesn't matter what culture you come from or what country you come from. All these plants were all of our first medicines. They were all of our first foods.
Megan, what are some of the plants that you use?
So we use a lot of what most people call common weeds. And so we use a lot of broadleaf plantain, stinging nettle, we use a lot of mullein and horsetail, we use chamomile, we use arnica, we use a variety of different plants that people would call like common nuisances or common weeds that they usually just pull out of their gardens and their yards and spray. And we also use dandelion. So we, we use a lot of common plants that are, grow absolutely everywhere.
So when you have the plants, do you use the flowers or the leaves or what part?
It depends upon what I'm making with it. And so if it's a tea, it's commonly the leaves, the flower, the berries, sometimes the root. We also use some chaga mushroom. And so it just depends upon what I'm making. That completely depends upon the part of the plant that I'm using.
So do you have to dry those plant parts before you use them?
Sometimes, if we're in the warm season, then I can use fresh things, but we often get a lot of everything dried. We usually dry it all out, and then so we can save it and make things throughout the year.